Welcome to another episode of Judge for Yourself. The Marikana Commission of Inquiry has been plagued by some controversy over legal fees. The commission, as you may recall, headed by retired Appellate Division Judge Ian Farlam, is investigating the circumstances that led to the deaths of 44 people during the violent unrest at Lonmin Mines over a year ago. The legal team representing many of the arrested and injured miners provisionally pulled out due to a lack of funding. Advocate Dalim Mpofu went to court in a bid to compel the state to pay his team's legal fees, but the North Gauteng High Court dismissed this application. Mpofu has appealed, and I understand that that appeal will still be heard. But in the meantime, he has wanted the commission postponed. Some have criticised Mpofu's move, saying he should have taken on the case pro bono. Others point to the very flawed and unfair structure of all commissions of inquiry in South Africa, and particularly this one, because of the nature of the events which gave rise to it in the first place, and the impoverished people who really are hanging on a decision as to what actually happened on that fatal day. Now, to discuss this, we're joined in the Cape Town studio by Nathan Geffen, editor of Ground Up, who wrote an opinion piece on the Marikana funding crisis. Pierre de Vos is a professor of law at UCT, and Johannesburg, we have Andres Nkoma, who is an attorney on Mpofu's team that represents the Marikana miners in the Commission of Inquiry. Before we begin, I want to just play this bite from the Justice Minister as to his attitude to the funding.
The request for this funding by the said attorneys was considered, but could not be granted, as the legal framework of the State Attorney Act and the Commissions Act do not provide for legal representation for witnesses who are not in the employ of the state when the incidents or events being investigated happened.
Surely to goodness, there is some point of the state actually funding this commission.
Yes, there is indeed. I think if you're going to have a commission of inquiry structured in this particular way, where lawyers of the one side, actually the people who are the most powerful in this instance, the government, the police, the Lonmin and so on, they have money to pay for lawyers. Then the other side surely should also have funding for lawyers. And I think the minister is not entirely correct in saying there is no legal framework for this, because the Commissions Act actually empowers the president and gives him extraordinarily broad discretion to make any regulations on any issue that is going to be successfully conclude the commissions.
But let me put this to you. I mean, that may be, but the state has got a huge amount of pressure on its own fiscus. I mean, the fact of the matter is that we've got serious funding problems right across the board in this country. I mean, is there a free ticket?
Yes, that is of course true, but I think a reasonable amount of funding for all the lawyers involved is not without, it is within the reach of the state. If the state can spend 200 million rand on a specific residence, then surely a few 100,000 rand for lawyers.
But it's not a few 100,000 rand, number one, and we'll get to that. And number two, why does this have to be, isn't the problem, why have you not criticized the running of the commission?
Well,
the fact that this thing's gone on forever, and that obviously engenders far greater fees than otherwise would be the case.
Yes,
most of you have been very silent about that.
That's why I said, given the way the commission has been run, you have to
be fair.
Is that
your outlet?
That is my starting point. Given the fact that it is run like a court of law, really,
all right, I want to
then
come
you
back
need
to
have a court of law. This is different, though. There's a different approach that you can take. You can have a judge that is more inquisitorial and so forth.
I'm going to debate that with you because I think the public is entitled to know about that. But Nathan Geffen, I mean, can I just ask before we start, I noticed in your article you didn't say very much about the state's obligations. Can we just get clear what your position is on that?
Oh, I completely agree, Judge, that the state should be treating...
You don't have to be so polite.
The state should be treating all parties equally in this matter, and they haven't treated all parties equally. So on that point, I'm agreed. But the point I've been making is that there are a whole lot of injustices around Marikana, the lawyers' fees and how much Advocate Mpofu and the legal team that's representing the Marikana miners, their legal fees are not the most important issue that needs to be resolved around Marikana. Now, I just want to give you a couple of facts.
Before you do that, and before I ask Andres to respond, let me put this to you. Maybe, but their argument would be that the other lot, the Lonman people and the state people and all the other people, are being paid huge, vast sums of money, and a sort of
obscene amounts of money.
Yes, you may want to use that word. And therefore, to some extent, isn't it fair that poor people should also be funded by the state to a sense that they get the kind of quality of representation that they surely deserve?
I agree that the state should treat all sides equally, but there was an imperfect way out of this impasse, and it hasn't been taken by the lawyer, by Advocate Mpofu and his team. And the imperfect way out was that a private foundation, the Wraith Foundation, has given them already 2.8 million rand, of which 187,000 rand of that was for expenses like staying in hotels, etc. And then that was for the period October to December. And then they gave them another they offered them another 2 million rand to cover the period March to May. Now what I've said is that's 4.8 million rand. It's an enormous amount of money. It's the kind of money that the miners who they're representing will never see in their lifetimes.
Yeah, but they didn't say it was... I understand that it may have only been 2.8 and 2 wasn't given, but I'm going to ask Andres about that in a moment.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, Advocate Mpofu should have said, you know what, it's not perfect, we're not happy with this, but you know what, we'll do it. Because it's a lot of money, I'm not going to starve, it's decent money, I might be able to earn more money elsewhere, but it's a great honor to represent the Marikana miners. And there are a dozen other advocates in the country who would have done that.
Well, maybe, but let's take a break, and then I want to ask Andres for his attitude to this particular point that you're making.
News that moves. ENCA.com.